Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2544. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. I'm founder Mark Green, and I've handed the keys to this car over to Ginger Baker Rust, who's a lifelong enthusiast. Ginger's here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, and buckle up and get ready for a fun ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today, we are coming to you from the beautiful city of New Berlin, Wisconsin, with a very renowned car collector whose name is Rick Blaha. Hello, Rick. Welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have it in gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I guess I'm ready as I'm going to be.
Rick, please share something about yourself that most people may not know.
I thought about that, not a whole lot, but I had a very successful and quite an impressive business. One of the things that I was most gratified with is whenever I gave anybody a tour, someone had known me for months, years, a long time, they would take a tour and go, I can't believe I have no idea you had a company like this. And the same holds true for my car collection. People come into my garage and they look around and it's, I get comments like, whoa, Jay Leno.
Yeah.
Because there's generally 15 or 20 cars in there, and wonderful assortment of old cars and Vipers and Corvettes and that sort of thing. But they didn't know that. So I guess those are the two things people don't know about me unless you get up close and personal and I show you the garage or I show you my company. And I've always liked that. I don't like braggers and bullshitters and boasters and that sort of thing.
Well, I'll tell you, Rick and I met out on the Salt.
Well, actually, no, we met at SpaceX.
Yeah, it was in Spaceport, wasn't it, New Mexico, when we were running a land speed event out there. And then, was that before or after you started racing on the Salt?
That was before. That was an event before.
Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Rick Blaha. Rick Blaha is well known in the tight circles of car collectors. He started drag racing in his teens and is now a land speed racer. In 2018, Rick got salt fever after attending a land speed event at the Bonneville Salt Flats and began land speed racing, acquiring his A license on the Salt. And that is no simple feat, let me tell you. Blaha was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and attended the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Rick was a commercial banker for 26 years before starting a very successful custom packaging company, Packrite, which he sold to a Fortune 500 company in 2018. Rick is married to Melanie and has three sons, Eric, Kirk, and Michael. And I will also say this, the picture that people see of me sitting in a car, Rick Blaha took it. And that's the headshot that I use for all my professional stuff in racing. And it was in his car.
I get a kick out of that. I remember that day well.
Yeah, that was at Spaceport in New Mexico in Atlanta.
Correct, yeah.
Rick, let's go a little faster down the Salt and share with us more about your journey into the racing world. How did all this get started?
Well, I grew up in a family that always had a car affliction. My dad loved cars. My brother, who is 7 years older than me and who was my idol when I'm a little kid, had 51 Fords and 49 Fords. And so that was, it was kind of like this car thing that calls out. I like that. It's something that I want to be part of. So I would say I come from a car loving family. And as time went on and you get married, and a lot of car activities are budget related. So you start off slow and you buy an older car and you putz with it. The progression is first, it basically follows the activity in your bank account.
Yeah.
And as that
There's
grew,
that.
as that grew, then it was like, well, I think I'm going to do this and I think I want to do that and I'll try another car. The racing thing came about late in life. And I will tell you, one of the perhaps distinguishing features about me is I'm a late bloomer with most everything I do. I started a business. I left a job as a senior vice president of a $10 billion bank. It was a pretty cushy job. I mean, I'm wearing three-piece suits. I'm at a country club. I'm playing golf a couple times a week. And, I did well in banking, mostly because I had enough brains related to analyzing a business statement but also I think they had an outgoing personality. So I made my mark in my own banking career by being a really effective business developer. And, this goes back, 40 years ago when business development in banking wasn't even a part of the culture.
Right.
Banking was, well, you show up at the bank, get on your knees and ask for a loan. And I took it upon myself to go bang on doors of businesses and say, hey, do you need anything? Are you buying anything? Any equipment? Are you putting up a building? Would you like a line of credit? And so oftentimes I would get the response, I've never had a banker visit me. So that formula proved to be quite successful. And as in most businesses, if you're a productive rainmaker, as I like to think of sales, that bodes well for your career path and your compensation. But as time went on, working with businesses, I can't tell you how much I learned consciously and subconsciously. I learned probably as much of how to run a business as how not to run a business. Mm-hmm. And most of the people that don't do well or fail in business really are never very accountable to themselves. They'd rather blame, the economy, the weather, competitors, whatever. And that's not my orientation. But the takeaways from learning from failed experiences is every bit as valuable as successful experiences. So working with businesses all my life, when I was a kid in high school and growing up in a family that's very much middle income, there wasn't any entrepreneurial motivation or desire or those types of things. What occurred to me is that, if you're in business, you have to be very special. You have to be very smart. You have to be a whole lot of things. But as I started to work with businesses, it's like, well, you're not any smarter than I am. In fact, I think I'm smarter than you. And I don't mean from a wise guy standpoint, because that's also a little true. But eventually, as so many industries have consolidated, the independence of a small community bank goes away when it's acquired by a regional bank. And then it becomes more bureaucratic and more ass-kissing and more problematic in terms of being able to deliver a style in my approach to working with businesses that I did. And I'm 48 years old at the time, and I'm going, I don't know if I could see this out. I mean, it's getting worse every year, worse in terms of the flexibility and freedom. Let me give you an example. If you're a good customer of mine and you're down in Florida and you want to buy a condominium, back in the day, I'd say, fine, how much do you need? The next thing I'd do is get a cashier's check made up and a note, and I'd FedEx it to you. So you got the cash already with the, and then you'd sign the note and send it back. Never in a million years are you going to be able to do that sort of thing. You're not going to have that kind of autonomy, unless perhaps you're the bank owner yourself.
Right.
But all that was kind of going away. And instead of having a long-standing, really close relationship with customers, I had to approach them saying, hey, we now need to have you sign this 25-page loan agreement. Yeah. Well, why? Where did I do wrong? Sort of thing. So I always, ever since I started working with businesses, that was kind of a fantasy island thing. Boy, that'd be cool if I had my own business. As the transition took place from having autonomy and flexibility and being able to deliver banking services the way I think I like to deliver them, that thought of having my own business crossed my mind more and more and more. So a couple of takeaways of what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to have a partner. I will tell you, in my experience over 26 years, partnerships almost always fail. There's a higher divorce rate in business partnerships than there is in marriage. And that's always problematic because, you got to buy me out or I got to buy you out or whatever. I mean, it's just, so it's like, no, I don't want to have a business partner. And I also think that I am universally talented in so many things. I'm kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. But one day I came across a company that had been floundering around and losing money in a segment of the packaging industry. So I approached the guy. I initially started with him saying, hey, let me come in and fix your business. And he was all about that because he was very incapable himself. And I spent 3 months looking at the company, and it didn't take me 3 months to figure it was dead. he was bringing $30,000-$40,000 a month from home just to keep the business afloat. So I said to myself, number one, I don't want to be a partner with you. And number two, I can fix everything that's broken here. So I made him a proposal to buy his business. And the attractive feature from his standpoint was, guess what? I don't have to keep bringing 30, 40 grand a month to keep this business floating. So we put a deal together, and March 15th, 1996, I opened up Pack Rate Limited in Milwaukee. And if you've ever heard the quip, fake it until you make it,
Yeah,
it's exactly what I did, right? So
absolutely.
I'm a good listener. I pay attention. I've got a good instinct of what is it you need. And I also brought a more professional interaction with potential customers than the predecessor company. And one of the companies I went out and knocked on the door was General Electric Healthcare, which has a big presence in the Milwaukee area. And it worked. We got a couple of projects, and that kind of put us on the map in terms of, hey, we got some business.
Yeah.
That's kind of an important part of the business model. So anyway, I probably ask myself every day, and that's not an exaggeration, for several years, what the fuck did I get into? Because I'm telling you, it is hard. If you
It
work,
is.
it's unbelievably hard. There's survival instinct. I mean, the fear, in my back of my mind, I knew I could go back into banking. I had a good reputation. Didn't really want to do that. But I'll tell you, survival instinct is a very, very powerful force. And I set up a couple of little metric measuring type tools, and I knew I was making progress, but I hung in there. And when good things happen, and sometimes they're minor good things, you go, hey, I'm kind of getting this thing right. So fast forward 22 years later, we went from zero to $20 million a year in sales, and we were quite profitable. And I will also tell you, if I would give you a tour of the business, which I sold 5 years ago, but if I would give you a tour of that business, you would say, I have no idea you had a company like this, Rick.
Yeah.
Giving people a tour of the business. We had a 125,000 square foot plant. We had 85 employees. We had a lot of technology with CNC and water jet cutting, and probably our biggest secret sauce of our tech was the technology of our CAD design team. We had 5 or 6 engineering, CAD design, packaging engineers. And when reputable companies and would come to us, they'd say, I didn't know. I've been looking for someone like you for a long time. And the referrals, we've never had a salesman per se. I did most of the selling, but the referrals started to come in. If somebody from GE left and went to Medtronics, I'd get a phone call saying, hey, I need you over here, and so on and so on. So today, fast forward now 25 years after I started the company, they are doing business with Tesla, Rivian, and SpaceX. So a lot of bragging rights, and I don't like to be a braggart type, but I mean, the fact of the matter is we put together a business model that brought great value, and there was definitely a market niche for it. So that's how I transitioned from banking into my own business. I also want to mention that I was extremely fortunate. I had 2 sons, Michael and Kirk, that were in the business with me. They're both wonderfully talented guys. And then my wife was our office administrator, and she's highly skilled. She also comes out of the banking industry. So I had some real key people that I guess were, trustworthy.
Yeah.
Because the final comment I want to kind of make about business is it's not oftentimes said because politically you're supposed to say, hardworking people and blah, blah. I'm telling you, finding a good employee is an incredible challenge.
Yeah.
It is 95% of the challenge of putting a good business plan together or exercising a business plan. I could write a book on just what I thought was all the comical miscues of people that walked through our doors. Some of them were very good, thank God.
Yeah.
And others were, are you kidding me? They started a new job at 8 o'clock and either didn't show up or I fired them 15 minutes later. I mean, quality of people in the workforce blows you away. And I never read anything about that. It's always about some political sentiment of, hardworking people and this and that. And it's like, well, send some of those to me because I could use them.
Exactly.
It was, the whole experience was very gratifying, very difficult, but a chance to work with your kids beyond just bringing them up through school, right?
Yeah.
So I look back at it and I'm proud of it, but I'm also very gratified that, it's always wonderful to make money. But more importantly was I got a great chance to develop my kids. I was able to successfully interact with my wife in the workplace, although she wanted me to be her husband in the workplace, and I said that isn't going to work. I'm the boss.
Oh no, you got to separate the two for sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that's my story of my career path.
Well, it's interesting, and I know you don't know this about me, but we actually have a lot in common besides the land speed racing. Early in my career, when I was working for Lowe's Home Improvement headquarters in North Carolina, I actually was in the private brand department when they started developing their private brands, and I was actually one of those designers that designed packaging for all those private brands for 50.
I wish I would have known that. I would have made a job offer for you.
But I've been like you. I've been on the business development side, business ownership, and boy, yes, I agree with everything that you absolutely say. And one of the points that you said too about hard work, and the other thing about being successful is, man, and I talk about this a lot. You have to understand and learn the art of no. And the no doesn't necessarily mean no. There's just another way to do it. And you just have to find out. And you've got to hustle. You have got to hustle. You've got to think. You've got to be ahead. You've got to think ahead. And you got to solve a problem. And people ask me all the time, well, how do you do marketing? How do you do business development? It's simple, right? You learn the art of no. You look to solve a problem and you hustle your ass off. And you've got to be faster, just like in racing. You've got to be the one that's got to think ahead, and you got to see the holes, and you've got to understand what the opportunities are to take advantage of them.
Well, even that was all developmental along my way, because you made the comment about solving problems. Kind of what is the fundamental purpose of a business.
Yeah.
Tell me what your concerns and problems are. Well, our $45,000 X-ray tubes are breaking just shipping it to the hospital.
Yeah.
They need to be better protected. And the other thing is, there's 1,000 things that get involved with decision-making and planning and whatever, but position yourself into a niche market where not everybody's scrambling around. And I'll use this as an example. One of the most basic, inexpensive, generic types of packaging is a wood pallet. And so, in the first couple of days, I drive around industrial parks, I look out back, and so, they got a bunch of pallets. And then I walk inside going, maybe there's a business opportunity, and they're paying, back in those days, $5.50 for a pallet.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, well, they need 100 of them a month. I went back, I did our time study and material study, and and it was like, well, it looks like it's going to cost me $4 in materials and $6 in labor. I don't know how I'm going to be competitive with that. So that experience really forced me to go and do things that other packaging or pallet manufacturers and things couldn't do. So we evolved to the point of, if you're in a niche market of protecting valuable things, aerospace, medical equipment, things that are worth, we were packaging up $3 million MRI systems. We were packaging up fuel tanks for Boeing aircraft. And you would think a fuel tank is something you could just throw on a pallet, wrap it up, ship it. No. If that fuel tank has a bit of a nick or a scratch on it, it's getting rejected. So that has to be also packaged with the care and the protection. So it's as new when it arrives at its destination as when it left the factory. So that was our focus. And, I had a couple friends that would come to me and say, hey, could you ship a fender to a friend of mine? I did it a few times as a courtesy, but no. Well, you mentioned earlier saying no. Yes, stay away from the stuff. Learn what markets are demanding the types of services you want to provide. I always maintain an excellence of wanting to be the best, be courteous, customers used to look at me like I was crazy. I'd say, look, I'm here, I'm available to you 24/7. You want to call me on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock? Call me. Because the packaging managers and shipping managers in most of these companies are dealing with crisis all day long. Things are late, things are broken, things are damaged. And if you step in and solve some of their problems, you got a customer for life. So not only was it enjoyable and that was the solution, et cetera, but my kids got a chance to learn that culture and done very well in the careers that they're in now.
That's so true. I tell people there's two things I know about successful people in business is one, don't think that they can work 9 to 5 because that doesn't make you successful in business. That doesn't mean you have to work 100 hours a week, but you've got to, you can't be a 9 to 5er. And the other thing, the thing I know that all successful people in business that I know, they put their shopping cart back.
Yeah. So you got to be humble. I mean, I had a few banking associates show up in my business thinking, hey, Rick escaped from banking and he's got his own business. I'm telling you, in the first few years of my business, if you walked in and saw me full of sawdust, you'd feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
Oh, why would you give up a job as a banker? And the other thing is that I have a pretty good forward vision. I know what I want to do and what things will look like when I'm aiming towards a particular goal. And I don't know if that's an instinctive thing, but I never for a moment was the least bit embarrassed that, I was in my shop clothes because half of my time was in the shop producing parts myself.
Yeah.
I've always been a very handy guy, very hands-on guy, whereas I'd say 98.5% of the bankers wouldn't know which end of a screwdriver to use, Anyway, it was a hell of a trip. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And when I sold the company, it was 5-6 years ago. I'm telling you, for 4 years, I got to come up with another game. I want to get back in the game because the game is really exciting.
Right. Because it's an adrenaline rush. It's just like racing, right?
Yes.
And that's why, that's why I explain to people too, that, I get a big rush in doing business, and it's the same feeling similar to what I get when I sit in the seat of a car. Right.
Yeah.
And, so let's talk a little bit about that. So you had this wonderful business. And did you start your car collecting before you sold the business or after? Because I know that you started land speed racing after you sold your company.
Yes, I think we started the building project towards the end of when I was operating the company. But I had a good friend who was a bank customer of mine who was the medical director at Road America. Uh-huh. And I had never been involved or attended a road racing. And he said, oh, you got to come up, and I'll get your medical credentials, which means you can go anywhere on the track and blah, blah, blah. So I started to go up. And when I'm around things that call out to me, the next thing I go, I kind of like this, okay? So now I'm in my 40s, early to mid 40s, but I'm also realizing I'm not a kid anymore. I didn't do go-karting when I was 8 years old and blah, blah, blah. And I'm too old. Well, I went up to a major July event at Road America. They used to call it Chicago Historics. Now, depending on the sponsor, they call it other things. But it's the largest vintage racing event in the world. There's like 600 cars. And I remember walking around, and there were Mustangs and, all the cool muscle cars of the old days, and Can-Am racers, and it was like in heaven. And I'm going, oh, gosh, I wish I could have done this. And then the drivers would come get out of the cars, and they're in their racing suits and their helmets. They take off their helmet, and I'd go, are you shitting me? You're an old white-haired guy. and I was amazed. Old people can do this. Absolutely. So that reset my mind of, no, I'm not too old to do it. So you begin the path. Took my family down to Disney World, and back then there used to be a 1.5 mile, I think, track, and they ran races there. And for some reason, that didn't all work out. But I'm staying in the rustic hotel there, and I'm going down in the morning, and I'm going to get some coffee. And I look, there's a brochure on the table, Richard Petty Driving Experience. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, 11 o'clock, I'm all suited up in one of those stock cars, and that was so freaking cool. That's when I got the real bug in terms of, no, I got to be doing this, you know. So
Yeah.
you're doing laps at 120 miles an hour, but
Yeah. It's never enough.
it's just, if that's your deal, it's so damn exhilarating. So then I came back and then I started looking for a race car, and I had spent enough time around road racing that I think that's what I wanted to get into, particularly the vintage aspect of it, old Mustangs, old Corvettes, and I bought a 1970 240Z, which in its day were very, very successful road racers. I don't know if you've ever interviewed Peter Brock, and if you haven't, you should. Uh, and don't wait too long. He's 80 years old. And went to driver's school. And I just remember going down the back straightaway at Road America, like in disbelief, because I'm on the other side of the fence and now I'm over on the track side.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I think I was screaming like, this is so cool. And then I just want to tell you one other little story. So my kids have always been in tow, go to the races, and they'd come back to the car and they had race tires they got for free. Where the hell are we going to put those, right?
Right.
By the way, I stood at the fence with my two boys and I said to them, you know what? We're going to do this someday. And they looked up to me. You know, it's like kids believe their dads, you know, I'm going to go to the moon someday or whatever. Now, fast forward, my two sons also got into racing. And so we're all down at Indy. My son's running a 510. My other son's running a 69 Corvette. And I've got a GT1 Camaro. And it turns out the operator of SBRA was a great marketer of a guy, but he was having a pro-am event. And so the pro-am event, he had gotten 33 retired Indy drivers. Some of them were like Dick Simon, who are older dirt, and others were pretty recent, Paul Tracy and those. So there was the best of the best of Group 6 cars from Texas and the East. And then my little family shows up. We're in Gasoline Alley because we were running that event. Damned if we don't win the event.
Oh my gosh.
So my son gets a Rolex watch and his suit, and he's on the radio. But there wasn't any better exhilarating experience. You're with your kids. You're at Indy. So I said to my son Kirk, I said, "Hey, I told you one day we'd be racing." He says, "Yeah, but you didn't say Indy."
Right.
Fun stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was probably envied by more racers, more of my fellow racers, not because, gods, are you good, but because you got your family there. So many of the racers had kids or wives that, I'm not interested.
Right.
I got all my kids not only there, but they're racing, and my wife is there, and it's a family event. So kind of like my business, even my racing hobby ended up involving my kids. And I am just so freaking blessed in so many ways.
Oh, there's nothing like racing family.
Yeah.
Throughout your life, I know that there are people who were great inspirations to you. Would you share with us a key mentor who helped you to be successful, and who's been the most influential person in your life?
Well, I got out of high school when I was 17 years old, and I have no complaints about my childhood. Although my mom passed away when I was 10 years old. So myself and my two sisters, we kind of raised ourselves. And there was never any encouragement to do something beyond what my dad did. He was a machinist at Ellis Chalmers. In fact, I remember in my senior year, and what are you going to do after school? And he said, I think I might be able to get you in down at Allison's.
Yeah.
I didn't have any interest in it. Already thought I'm going to go and get an accounting degree and I'll do bookkeeping, which is a good thing I didn't do. But I started the day after I got out of high school at a small printing company, because in high school I had print shop for 4 years and an absolutely wonderful family. They were the brother and his dad was the father that I never had. And they would offer words of encouragement. So I had an apprenticeship in printing. So that would actually be an okay career gig. But they said, look, you have so much more capability than just being a printer. You really should think about, a career path, blah, blah, blah. I started going to school in the evenings. So Warren Schwenner, who has long since passed away, but he is, I think, almost every time that I've got a free moment and I'm reflecting, I'm looking up at heaven saying, "Hey, Warren, thank you." And there were a few other folks along the way. I think the concept of mentoring is freaking invaluable. First of all, I've done a lot of pay it forward. I was at a small shop yesterday, two brothers that have a business where they do wraps and PPF, ceramic coatings. And I spent a couple hours with them, just coaching them and do's and don'ts. I said, look, I'm available if you just want someone to bounce ideas off of. So I continue to pay forward with that whole mentoring role. And anytime I come across a young person, I'll suggest to them, you got to find a mentor.
Absolutely.
Someone who has capabilities, someone who has talents, someone who takes a liking to you. And sometimes that's, for whatever reasons, that concept just isn't acted upon anywhere nearly enough. More recently, and I'd say go back 5 years or so, I've become a huge fan of a gentleman called Jordan Peterson. And anybody that's listening to this podcast, I would highly encourage you to listen to Jordan Peterson's podcast. He's a brilliant man. He's a world celebrity. He's a psychologist and a former professor at the University of Toronto. He's written books, and he just started Peterson Academy that have got, and I've enrolled and I'm taking some of the courses, but it costs $399 a year, and there are quality college level courses. And now his next challenge is to get accreditation, because rather than spend 40, 50, 60 grand a year on going to a designer school, this stuff could be available to everyone. He's a very much of a mentor. I've met him several times. I highly recommend it. My kids get tired of it because I'll send them things.
Right.
Hey, listen to this.
Absolutely. Rick, please share with us a difficult challenge, failure, or obstacle that you faced, whether in your personal life or your business, and tell us how you overcame that situation and what did you learn?
Well, you have to continue to learn. The idea of I'm graduating from high school, I hate school, I'm never going to, boy, is that a wrong position to take. Certainly the business was the most challenging in terms of building something from ground zero that you're not even all that proficient in, and learning. I knew quite well the banking element, accounting and those types of things, but take my business from ground zero to when it was able to sustain itself, which was surprisingly enough, we were always profitable, but that's just because I didn't take an income.
Right.
So,
exactly.
so that career-wise, that probably is the biggest challenge that I've ever overcome, and it took literally years to do that. And it's amazing when any of us can determine to dig down and get something done, the survival instincts, you end up being so much smarter than you ever gave yourself credit for.
Yeah, I completely agree. Survival instincts are invaluable. Let's talk about this next chapter of life in your bucket list. Please share with us what you would still like to accomplish.
Well, first of all, I've accomplished, I come from a modest family where there wasn't anybody in the family that has ever gone on to be the least bit successful. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I think it's pretty common across the board, right?
Yeah.
But in learning to solve problems, you end up developing an arsenal of skill sets that you learn work for you, but you also learn nobody really wants to hear your suggestions and recommendations. I am freaking amazed how many people, hey, have you thought about doing this or thought about doing that? Or how about trying this? No, that isn't going to work. And it's like, okay, you're on your own. There are those along the way that say, hey, thank you. And can I look to you? I've helped start a half a dozen businesses. And these young men who were in their 20s when they started them, today, they look to me like I'm their dad. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you. And, so that's very gratifying as well. But in terms of what I feel I have yet to accomplish, quite frankly, I'm getting used to retirement. Now I ran Bonneville last year, so it's not as though I'm sitting in an easy chair watching reruns.
Right.
But what means a great deal to me is family. And I am blessed with an incredible family. Sometimes they get a little tired of me still trying to be dad. But we do a lot of travel together. I took two of my sons to New York in January. We froze our ass off, but had a great time. The year before, we went to Washington, D.C. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff. I have one son that lives in California in Huntington Beach. My other two sons live on a small farm, which is the family compound, so to speak. One lives on either side of it. I've got the barn in the middle with the garage. It's a beautiful facility. You're invited to it anytime you're in the Milwaukee area.
Thank you.
But even my son in California is coming back for Father's Day. So all my boys will be together, and we're already putting together, okay, what are we going to do? And we'll sit around and have a bonfire at night at the farm, but we're also going to do this and that. So family is huge, but also my relationship with my wife, and this is a Jordan Peterson recommendation as well. We've been married 40 years, and we still date, which sounds a little corny, but that is a key element to successful marriages. We are leaving Saturday morning on a road trip for 10 days and going to Yellowstone National Park. I was there when I was 10 years old, and it was pretty darn cool. My wife will say, "Hey, can we go to Yellowstone?" So yeah, we're doing a road trip, and she's jumping out of her skin, all excited about it, and I'm really kind of getting revved up too. I don't mind driving. I like exploring. One of the first stops is going to be, I believe it's in Iowa, where John Wayne was born, and there's a museum there. Corny little stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, on my bucket list, and this is true in racing, I'm somewhat competitive, but I really just want to be a participant. And I also don't want to be a backer or someone out there that's going to endanger someone else. When I was racing, and if there were 60 cars in the field and I'd finish 15th or 18th, that's pretty damn good for me. And then when my son started racing my old race cars, the 240 and the Corvette, he started dominating the classes those cars were in. And so I used to get a lot of kidding about, geez, how come you couldn't drive like that, Rick? I said, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. Kirk is a big guy. He's 300 pounds, and he's 6'4". So for someone that size, that's not a normal size for a race car driver. But he has so many trophies and medals and podiums, and including the biggest race he won was the Indy Pro-Am. That's another thing not to be proud of just because you're with your kids, but your kids are really a really good driver. People are going up and saying, boy, your son's really a good shoe.
You mentioned Bonneville, and you, like me, didn't really get an opportunity to do that till later in life. And I try to describe Bonneville to people that if you've ever watched the movie Mad Max,
yeah,
that is like going on the set of Mad Max, and it's the most raw, pure form still of racing and being MacGyver and, building things that people would never imagine. And if you've never been to Bonneville, you have to go. And I have to ask you, because I know you got your A license now. Are you going for your next one at Bonneville?
So I'm retired from racing. My last car, and I still own it, is a GT1 Camaro. That thing ran at Daytona, the Daytona 24 race multiple times. I was doing over 200 miles an hour, yada, yada. One thing, and I'm 77 years old, I'll be 78 in October. Racing is very demanding of your physical acuity. And maybe I'd be able to go out there and drive my son's 510, but I don't have the courage anymore. I've accepted the fact that physically the challenge with Bonneville, there's multiple challenges, but a big challenge with Bonneville is it's a very expensive proposition. You got to cart a team and go cross country, and you got all the expenses related to it. And flea bag motels that get $59 a night are now $559 and yada, yada. But the weather is so problematic. You've been rained out twice, and roughly $18,000 of expenses. We go out there and we're not running. 2 years later, same thing. So that's a little discouraging. The other thing is, I'm good with 200 miles an hour. The car was built so it has the theoretical capability of 250, 255. The class record is 263. So it's a car that if someone were to take it, move it forward, and I don't know whether my racing son has an interest in doing that, but you have to go through development. You got to go through wind tunnels, blah, 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 sort of thing. The car is ready to rock and roll. I don't think I'm going to go anymore because of his huge time commitment. This past year, it was an absolute thrill. And I like diversity. I mean, I like road racing and I like drag racing, and I'm going to do some drag racing this year. I have a couple of drag racing cars. But I think Bonneville for now is on hold. Well, I should say it's on pause permanently for me. But if my son or sons express an interest, hell yeah, and I'll sponsor them.
There you go. Let's talk about a special vehicle. Tell us about a truly special vehicle in your life. Share a great memory or experience you had with that vehicle.
Well, I have 4 Corvettes. I have 4 Vipers. I really love Vipers. I can still get in and out of them, which is a lot of times the determining factor. Are you going to keep these? I've got older cars. I go back. My oldest car is a 1949 Ford. I've got a 53 Chevy pickup, which is at my farm, and it is so much fun to drive. It is so primitive, but you can't go to the hardware store in the morning without drawing a crowd. No, my grandpa had one of those types of things. But I've been asked this question 1,000 times. Which is your favorite? I don't have a favorite. I can tell you my wife's of my collection, her favorite is a Shelby Mustang that I bought new in 2007, and it's got 5,000 miles on it, and it looks brand new. She loves that car. My current favorite, I bought a new, this is an age-related crossover. I bought a new Cadillac. I never in my life thought I'd ever own a Cadillac. I'm not a Cadillac guy, but Cadillac has a Blackwing, 668 supercharged horsepower, 6-speed, carbon ceramic brakes, and it's a car. It could be a daily driver. You could drive across country with it. So that's kind of my favorite girl today. But I really like them all, and I try to drive most of them a couple times a year. Never put much mileage on it, but I love them all. But today the Blackwing gets my vote as to this is the one I want to drive.
Let's get into your head a little bit and play car psychology. If you were a car, what would you be? And more importantly, why?
Well, it's often said that car or the vehicle that someone drives is a real reflection of them. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Cars have their own identity and personality, which is an extension of the individual owner or driver. I think probably the best generic automobile, if you like cars and you like the way they look and the way they sound, but they're not over the top. The current Mustangs are really cool cars. They're fairly affordable. They look cool. They go fast. So who would I be? I'd be a Mustang GT.
There you go.
I haven't heard from Ford, but supposedly I was approved for one of these GTDs. Are you at all familiar with that?
Oh, I am absolutely familiar with it. I have some really good friends that actually helped develop those at Ford.
Okay. So supposedly I've been approved, but I'm now going through my 3rd level of certification and validation that I wouldn't let anybody do. I can't sell it for 2 years, yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, these are $350,000 cars. And I'm going, be good to yourself, right? I don't know what the collectible value is. Obviously, we all know the Ford GTs were $450,000 cars, and they're all $1 million cars. That really wasn't my motivation. I would much rather have a Mustang GTD than a new Ferrari because I can relate to it. And I've seen the cars. I was out at Barrett-Jackson this year, and they had one on display. That's pretty freaking awesome. And they just set another track record out at Nuremberg. So kind of got off track as to what the original question was.
No, you did great. Well, no, that brings me to the ultimate drive. So I'm writing a blank check for the ultimate drive with no limitations. If I could wave a magic wand and arrange for you to go on the ultimate drive, what vehicle would you be in? And I'm going to maybe guess that might be it, and whom would it be with? And I may know that answer, but you tell me.
Well, I have such an incredible time with my kids, and my sons have become my best friends. So depending on where we're going, it would be one or more of my sons. Probably first order of business is for my wife. Now, we are doing a 10-day trip out to Yellowstone, and there's several different routes you can take. And we're not going to be busting our butt just to get there. I want to do a little sightseeing along the way. We're taking a Ford Bronco. I really should take the black way.
Yeah.
But the Ford Bronco is cool, and I don't have to worry about it. I've driven expensive cars, and then when you park in a hotel parking lot, then in the middle of the night, you're looking out the window. Is it still there? That kind of stuff. But I would say one of the Mustangs, probably a Mustang GT, or a Mustang 500, Shelby 500 GT.
Now, would you be driving or your wife?
She loves driving as well. She can drive a stick. So I would do 80% of the driving. She would do 20%.
There you go. Well, I know you mentioned earlier about Jordan Peterson, so I'm going to ask this question anyway, but please share a great book you've read, an article, or something that you've watched that you believe others can learn from.
Well, this isn't going to be racing related. I'm a personal friend of Ari Lyondike, and his autobiography is coming out, and he keeps sending me like a subscription request, and I'm going, Ari, if you like me, just give me the frickin' book. I've got a dozen or so racing books, Mark Donahue and the like. But probably as a group, first of all, people should read. It's a shame that people don't read, other than women, and then they just the types of readings don't really enrich their minds. It just entertains them. But I'm a huge fan of Bill O'Reilly. He has written a whole series of bestsellers. I just finished his book on all the presidents. I thought it was excellent. I learned stuff about history, and I learned, things about our country and the government. And he's got a new one coming out on the evil people in the world. But I think there's a dozen or 15 books in his series. They're audio if you want to drive in the car and listen to them, and they're also hard copy. But that series of books is entertaining, it's educational, and it's a good time. It's a good use of your time. And, now Peterson Academy has got this online academy, and they have currently 44 courses, and they're adding a couple, 3 a month. The first course that I'm taking is abnormal psychology.
Interesting.
It's an interesting choice. But I'm trying to figure out why things are so crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm four lectures into it, and I've learned way more. Years and years ago, I took basic psychology, right? But I'm learning way more about the profession, which is all relatively new, and it's up until the 50s or 60s, it was kind of black magic. But boy, mental illness. We end up on this closing topic. Mental illness is huge across the spectrum, and I don't think it's just the U.S. But there are so many things that are going on that I go, seriously, why would you do that? Why would you make that decision? And I'm highly judgmental. It's like, why do you have tattoos? Those are so stupid. You're going to look like a goofball someday. Or why is your hair pink? Or why are you gender confused? So why I picked that course out of all of them, I'm trying to better understand humanity. And what I'm finding is it's such a new field of healthcare. Nobody's got the answers yet. There's nothing particularly reliable. We'll need to get down someday to being able to do, DNA analysis and those types of things as to, this is why I think you're kind of goofball,
Yeah.
There's so much of that around. I find it very troubling.
So let's talk about parting thoughts when you say that. Please give our listeners a final parting words of wisdom and advice about life or business. And do you have a favorite quote or mantra that has meaning to you?
Yes. And I brought up Jordan Peterson multiple times today. So I get a commission on everything he sells.
I'm wondering.
Yeah, right. Here's a parting word. And I was kidding about that last time.
I know.
2 words. Aim up.
Well, listeners, you can find links to everything we talked about here today at carsyeah.com on the Rick Blaha link on the notes page. Rick, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time and sharing your experiences with our listeners. And it's so great to catch up again. And I definitely want to catch up more. It's been wonderful knowing you, getting to know you and learning more about you today. And it was so fun to be at Spaceport with you. And thank you again for that picture and the car. And
when you put that up as your Facebook picture, it's like, I'm bad.
Yeah,
I'm bad.
Exactly. Again,
good to reconnect as well. Stay in touch.
I sure will. Well, thanks again. And on that note, until we talk again, I will see you down the road.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find today's guest show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Fill Her Up. It's an ebook filled with gorgeous photos of fuel filler fun, including quotes from our inspiring automotive enthusiasts. While you're on the website, sign up for weekly blogs and a whole lot more. Download your copy today, and Ginger will see you next time here on Cars Yeah.